this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins, and their iniquities will I remember no more. In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
According to the Holy Scriptures, Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, is set to bring immortality to the nation of Israel, the elect, via establishing the tabernacle of David, as we talk about the second coming of who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. He is coming to take down this current world ruled by Esau, Edom, and establish a righteous kingdom, which is synonymous with the throne of David. That's scriptural, which is a government that's going to run this world in righteousness.
But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind, and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins, and their iniquities will I remember no more. In that he saith a new covenant, he hath made the first old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to us younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there, pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai. All right, and what I want to get into today, is a continuation in the book of 1 Samuel. All right, we made it to the 17th chapter, and this is a very, heavy chapter, probably one of the most, famous, accounts in the Bible. All right, and we're going to see, the Lord work a mighty work, all right, through young David, as we read in chapter 16, David has been anointed, to be the next king, all right, and the Spirit of the Lord, was heavy, on King David when he was anointed by Samuel, all right, and also the Lord had to where Saul will have favor, all right, on young David, and Saul doesn't know, that he's anointed to be next king, because Samuel, pretty much finesse as if he was going to do a sacrifice, in the house of Jesse, which, he did, okay, but the real play was to anoint, all right, young David to be the next king. So now, the Lord's going to show that he's dealing with, all right, young David, okay, in a way that he's not dealing with anyone else, okay? And this is going to begin, we're going to start to see, the envy, that's going to come upon, all right, King Saul. Okay, so let's jump into it. Okay, now this is 1 Samuel 17:1. It says the Philistines, all right, which you see that rivalry, of the Philistines and Israel. Okay, that ancient rivalry. All right, hey, how you doing? And this is why, you even see now that Jacob and Ham don't get along like that. All right, them Hamites, all right, they hate, all right, Jake. Okay, if you go to Africa and you get along with certain people over there, they're Jake. There's still a lot of Jake in Africa, but there's a hatred, all right, that Ham has, for Jake as well. Okay, but going back into it, it said the Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Succoth and Judah and Azekah at Ephes Damim. Saul countered by gathering his Israelite troops near the valley of Elah. So the Philistines and the Israelites faced each other on opposite hills with the valley between them. So you have, the military of the Philistines on one side of the valley and the military of Israel on the other side. Okay, so they're pretty much, in array of what you call battle formation against each other, a face-off. Okay, it said, then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of his spear was as heavy, all right, and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with a iron spear, all right, head that weighed 15 pounds. Okay, so this was a mighty man, and he was armed to the teeth. Okay, and said he was over 9 feet, which he could have been 12, 13 feet tall, man. Okay, to have armor, to weigh that much. Okay, weaponry that weigh that much. Okay, this was a massive guy, and he had all the the latest weaponry of that day. Okay, so you go into it, it should remind you of someone else we know. You see, and it says the shaft of his spear was heavy and as thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spear head that weighed 15 pounds. His armor bearer walked ahead of him carrying a shield. Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. Why are you all coming to fight? He called. I am the Philistine champion, but you are only the servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. Okay? And this is, common in the ancient world. Okay? You will have two kings to agree to let their champions fight, so they won't have to fight an expensive war. Lose a lot of men, spend a lot of money. Okay? So they'll solve it and let, their best soldier fight each other. Each, camp will pick their best soldier, their best warrior, and they will fight each other, and the winner take all. Okay, as Saul said, as Goliath said, if the champion of Israel will kill them, then the Philistines will be the slaves of Israel. But if Goliath killed the Israelite champion, then Israel will be slaves until the Philistines. Okay, and you see that, in that movie Troy, their first fight scene with Brad Pitt, when they go look for him and get him out the tent, and he goes fight this big massive man. All right, well, there was, Troy being the champion, for his king, fighting against another champion of another king. Okay, so you watch the movie Troy, you watch the first 15 minutes and you see that fight scene. It's similar to what's going on here, So reading on, and it says, if he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me. When Saul and the Israelites heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken, man. Okay? And see, this goes back to Saul's poor leadership, man. You know, he just didn't have it in him. Okay, at the end of the day, Saul just didn't have it in him, man. Okay? And the people seen he was shaky, scary, okay? And they were scary, man. You know, that's why you even had in the law, all right, that if anyone was, you know, of a fearful heart, they couldn't even go to war. Okay, when you go to the law and Deuteronomy. Matter of fact, let's see if we can find that. I think it's Deuteronomy, maybe 20. Let's see. All right, this is let me see. All right. Yeah, let's go here. I just read down on it. It says, when thou goest to battle, all right, this is Deuteronomy 20:1. It says, when thou goest to battle against thine enemies, all right, and seest horses and chariots and people more than thou, be not afraid of them. So we're commanded not to be afraid, you know, because we're outnumbered. Okay, because we have Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, and if we're fighting for righteousness, the Lord gonna fight with us, man. You know, he gonna be with us, man. Numbers don't matter, all right, and we're fighting in righteousness for Yahweh Bashim Shai. Okay, so we're commanded not to be afraid, you know, of a military, all right, or a nation being more powerful than us, man. Okay, we're commanded because the Lord showcases his power, all right, when you know when we look vulnerable, that's when the Lord showcases power, man. Okay, when it look like it's impossible, that's when the Lord showcases power. You see, and that's us being familiar with our power and knowing how he get down. And that's why we know the scenario that we're in now. Okay, where you carnally look at us compared to Esau and these heathens, man. There's no mathematically, scientifically, okay, psychologically, it doesn't make sense. Okay, but we know, all right, that we have Yahweh Bashim Shai, and we already have a victory written. The victory is already written about. The Lord has already decreed, okay, that the elect will be victorious, man. Okay, and that's what we lean on. So no matter what it looked like, and we have to keep this mindset going into these times, man, because we gonna be in some hell of a situations, man. But we have to remember there's a victory written. Okay, regardless of how I look in the moment, there's a victory written. All right, and King Saul, you know, he was shook up by the moment. Okay, he ain't have the faith, he ain't had that dog in him, man, in the spirit. Okay, so when you go into it, it says Deuteronomy 20:1, it says, when thou goest out to battle against thine enemies and seest, all right, horses and chariots and people more than thou be not afraid of them, for the Lord, okay, let me see what we get. It says, for the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai, thy power is with thee, which brought thee up out of Egypt. And it shall be when ye are come nigh unto the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak unto the people. The priest, you know, hey, showing you that, hey, the priest, okay, will be, you know, those spiritual motivators for the military, man, as well. Okay, it says, and shall say unto them, hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto a battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint. Fear not, and do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them. For the Lord your power, all right, is he that goeth with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. Okay, and I'm gonna jump down to the point. Okay, in verse 8, it says, and the officers shall speak further unto the people, and they shall say, what man is there that is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return and unto his house, lest his brethren's heart faint as well as his heart, man. So that fear is contagious, man. So that's why the Lord, even had in the law, if you're fearful and faint-hearted, when it's time to go to war, hey, stay your ass at the house, because that fear is contagious, man. And we seeing that with King Saul. That fearful spirit that Saul has is contagious, and now all of Israel is scared of this one man. And here it is, we're the sons of God, okay? But you're going to see, all right, how a young David hit the scene, man, okay? So let's go here. Let's go back to 1 Samuel 17. All right. And this 11 says, when Saul and the Israelite heard this, they were terrified and deeply shaken. Now David was the son, all right, of a man named Jesse, all right, an Ephrathite from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Jesse was an old man at that time, and he had 8 sons. Jesse's 3 sons, all right, 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shemaiah, had already joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. David was the youngest son. David's 3 older brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep, all right, in Bethlehem, okay, keeper of sheep, all right. So we know in the spirit, dealing with King David, just being the overseer of the sheep, with just ultimately him overseeing Israel, having that high office under Yahushua to oversee Israel. Okay, so going into it, it says, for 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistine champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. One day, Jesse said to David, take this basket. So for 40 days, Goliath is just talking shit, and no one, has took up the challenge because it was on, all right, the Lord was going to show power through young David. Okay, remember, the Lord always does things in an unexpected fashion, man. Okay, in a way, that throws everyone off. Okay, but it gives him all the glory. Okay, so when you go to verse 17, it says, one day Jesse said to David, take this basket of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring back a report on how they're doing. So he pretty much sent David on the food run, all right, and to get a report, the update, how this was going, this standoff between the Philistines, all right, the armies of the Philistines and the armies of Israel. Okay, it says, David's brothers were with Saul and the Israelite army at the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the morning, all right, and set out early the next morning with gifts as Jesse had directed him. He arrived in the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon as the Israelites and the Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army, David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, all right, the Philistines champion, all right, from Gath came out. Okay, it says came out from the Philistines' ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. Have you seen the giant? All right, the men asked. He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife, and that man's entire family, all right, will be exempted from paying taxes. So Saul has put a bounty on Goliath. Okay, and as you can see, the armies of Israel are terrified, every time they see him. Okay, so King David, this is his first time, all right, young David, all right, before he becomes king, you know. But young David, you know, this is his first time hearing this, you know. And what triggered David is he started to defy, all right, the Most High. You know, he was speaking blasphemy. He was talking reckless, okay? So when King David, when he hears it, he like, you know, he gonna go into it. King David hears this, now the whole dynamic finna change, okay? It said, David asked the soldier standing nearby, what will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living power? See, King David, all right, young David had a completely different spirit than everyone else, man. Okay? His mind, his thought process was different. Why? Because it was based in faith. Okay? See, David didn't see sides. David just seen that this nigga is a pagan, defying the God of Israel, defying the power of Israel, defying Yahweh Bashim Shai. So King David is already like, well, look, what's the reward for handling this nigga, man? Because in King David's mind, this nigga finished. What their reward is, I'm going to get, all right, for handling this nigga, man. You know? Why is this nigga even allowed to come out and say this every day? You know? So King David's spirit was different, you know, showing you that the elect, even when you go hear the numbers, all right? Because Jake, you know, Jake went through that in the wilderness, you know, and those 10 spies came back with their scary ass, you know, faithless report when they seen, you know, the size of them Hamites, all right, that was in the land, okay? You know, they gave that faithless report, you know? But you had Caleb, all right, and Joshua, all right, when you go here, you know, especially Caleb, you know, Caleb was like, look, we got these niggas, man. You know, Caleb, he gave a report on how good the land was, you know. He looked at the resources, you know. So he wasn't even thinking about who was on the land because the Lord had already promised us that land, okay? So he had faith in what was written. He had faith in the word. Okay, he didn't care who was on the land, how many, how tall. Okay, that didn't even factor. He factored in was the Lord was with him, you know. Plus he seen all the miracles of the Lord coming out of Egypt. Okay, going through, you know, defeating these heathen kings. Okay, so you go to Numbers 14. All right. So this is Numbers 14 and 20 says, and the Lord said, I have pardoned according to thy word, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shai. And see, what we have to understand, the Lord gonna get his glory in the earth. Damn what Esau talking about, man. Okay, all these gimmicks and, you know, agendas and games Esau playing. Okay, these enchantments and distractions and all over the place, these psyops this nigga got going on. Okay, all this military movement and crashing his own economy and all this shit that this man got going on. The Lord finna get his glory in the earth, man. All right, damn Esau, Amalek, you know, damn the U.S. military. Okay, them niggas trash. All right, the IDF trash compared to what the Lord finna do. All the heathens is trash, man. Okay, you know, we give the U.S. military is props, man, but compared to what the Lord got coming, man, the U.S. military is trash, okay? Garbage, all right? And the Lord gonna showcase that, man. And he built them up just to showcase his power and get glory in the earth, man, okay? So, the Lord is gonna get his glory in the earth, man. This is what we're finna see on the level that's never been displayed before, man. Okay, matter of fact, because he told you how Shai, and then we'll get back to that. This is the book of St. John, all right, chapter 12. All right, St. John chapter 12, verse 26 is that if any man serve me, let him, Salaki, 28. All right, this is St. John 12 and 28. It says, Father, glorify thy name. Then came there a voice from heaven, saying, I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. So we're in a time where the Lord finna glorify his name again. See, it's been a while since the Lord shook the earth up, man. Okay, with judgment. Okay, so we're in a time now where the Lord is finna shake the earth up with his judgment, man, and get glory unto his name. Okay, you see? So the hell, Esau got all this going on, and he puffed himself up, just like a Goliath. He boasting, he's blaspheming the Heavenly Father and his Son. Okay, he's doing the same thing Goliath was doing, beating his chest. Okay, and boasting of what he's going to do. Okay, making mockery. You see? So he's in the same position as Goliath, man. Okay, and he's gonna get, all right, the fate of Goliath, which is destruction, man. Okay, a great fall. Except the Lord's gonna do it on a much larger scale. Okay, and this time it's gonna be through Yahweh Shai directly, man. Okay, so let's go back to Numbers real quick. Got a point. All right, so that's the book of Numbers 14 and where we at? All right, number 14 and 21 said, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Al Shai, because all those men which have seen my glory and my miracles which I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, okay, and have tempted me now these 10 times, and have not hearkened to my voice, surely they shall not see the land which I swear unto their fathers, neither shall any of them, all right, that provoke me see it. Because the Lord not dealing with that faithless spirit, man. And just like now, 2/3, they're not going to see, the salvation that the Lord is finna bring to his elect, the believers, man. Okay, they're finna be consumed by judgment. Okay, the Lord not dealing with their spirit of unbelief, man. And that provokes the Lord to even more anger. When his own people don't believe in him, that provokes the Lord to anger. All right, so we're about to see the Lord's anger pour out in the earth against 2/3, man, for not believing, man. As Yahweh Shai told the wicked, leadership back then, he told them niggas, look, y'all gonna die in y'all unbelief. You don't believe that I'm him, nigga, you gonna die in your unbelief. So, reading on, verse 24, this the point. It said, but my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and have followed me fully, him will I bring into the land wherewith, all right, whereunto he went, and his seed shall possess it. So Caleb, the Lord said Caleb had another spirit, and that was a spirit of faith, a spirit of belief. He had full trust in his power, So like it real quick. All right, so going back into it, I'll read this in the NLT. This is Numbers 14 and 24. It says, but my servant Caleb has a different attitude than others have. All right, and when we operate in faith, we have a different attitude. We have a different outlook. Okay, we have a different, perspective on everything when we operate in faith and trust in Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. It's a different outlook, different attitude, man. Okay. Move different, the fear of the Lord is present, how we operate, man. Okay, and it says, but my servant Caleb has a different attitude than others have. He has remained loyal to me, so I will bring him into the land he explored. His descendants will possess their full share of the land, and only the faithful, all right, is going to see, the full glory, okay, and the salvation of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. You got that here. Let me get this. This second Ezra, the 9th chapter. Okay. Second Ezra 9, all right, and 7. And it says, and everyone that shall be saved, all right, and shall be able to escape, all right, by his works and by faith whereby ye have believed, shall be preserved from the said perils, and shall see my salvation in my land and within my borders, for I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. So the elect was predestined, and built a certain way. The elect are built to endure. Because at the end of the day, it's either, hey, we got it or we don't. You see? And the Lord is showing the different attitudes. You're seeing the different attitudes from a, King Saul, all right, and soon to be King David, all right, young David. Even in his youth, as a young man, the Spirit was on him, all right, to where he had a different attitude. He had a different outlook, okay? And we're about to see that, all right? So you go to, back to 1 Samuel 17, and where we at first? I started at 26 again. It said, David asked the soldiers, all right, 1 Samuel 17 and 26. It said, David asked the soldiers standing nearby, what will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is this pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living power? And these men gave David the same reply. They said, yes, that is the reward for killing. They said, yes, that is the reward for killing him. But when David's oldest brother Eliab heard David talking to the men, he was angry. What are you doing? All right, what are you doing around here anyway? He demanded. What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of? I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle. So we had Eliab, his older brother, scorning King David, and then you see, you hating, talking about what about those few sheep, sneak dissing, okay? And at the end of the day, and this was the first guy that Samuel seen. This was the first brother, all right, that Samuel seen, Eliab, and Samuel thought he was the guy, all right? But Eliab wasn't built like that, He probably looked the part, big Judite, cut, ripped, you see? He probably looked the part, but hey, he ain't have it in him. The inward man wasn't built right, okay? So now he's scorning King David. So King David gonna snap back. Verse 29 said, what have I done now? David replied, I was only asking the question. He walked over to some others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and the king sent for him. Okay, so King David, young David, he's not studying his brother, man. He's like, look, so what was that? What was their reward again? What were we supposed to get? You see? So now they're telling, King Saul that David is inquiring about their bounty. Okay? So as you read on, it says, don't worry about this Philistine. So King Saul sent for him, and this is the dialogue that young David and King Saul are going to have. It said, don't worry about the Philistine. David told Saul, I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There is no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. See, Saul wasn't in the spirit. Okay? You see, Saul was just in the flesh, and he's looking carnally. All right? Because remember, Saul doesn't have faith. Saul, he really doesn't trust in the power of Yahweh B'Shem Al-Shah. And see, our people, this is how our people look at us when we're teaching on the street corners and we're teaching against the so-called white man like it's pointless, man. Like what we doing is insignificant, okay? And we talk about rulership and the so-called white man, going down, Esau going down, they look at that as something that's impossible, man. you know, when the scriptures tell us, as we prophesy, that most of our people are not going to believe. Okay, that's why you go here, back to 2nd Ezra, all right, verse 15. 2nd Ezra 15:1 says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy, which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true," which is the Bible. All right, so as we speak prophecy into our people, all right, you read verse 3, it says, "Fear not the imaginations against thee. Let not the incredulity or the unbelief, the ability to believe, okay, of them trouble thee that speak against thee." As Saul, he was speaking against David like it was impossible, man. Like, as we prophesy to our people and we go into the prophecies about the kingdom to come, America being destroyed, and our people mind, they think that's impossible, man. Okay? A lot of our people feel like that's impossible, man. And what we're doing is insignificant, man. But that's how the Lord wants it to look. You see? That's how the Lord always plays it, man. All right? He always deal with the outcasts, the underdogs. But he always gives those underdogs that he's dealing with the faith, okay, and the spirit to believe against all odds. Okay? And this is how we're being groomed to think as we go into Jacob's trouble, man. Okay? Verse 4, it said, "For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness," man. Okay? And this is why 2/3, they're going to be devoured by these times to come. Okay? Because having that faithless spirit, which faith is a gift. You see? Faith is a gift. Let's get that. Get that in Ephesians 2:8. All right, this is the book of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of the Most High." So faith is something that the Lord, put in the spirit of the hopeful elect. And we hear this word that faith is activated, but that faith was always there. It was a gift that's given by Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah, to believe. Faith is a powerful thing. We're really about to see the power of just believing in Yahweh Bashim Al-Shah. We're really going to see that power activate by faith, man, in these times. Okay? So, let's go here. 1 Samuel 17:34, it says, "But David persisted," so David pretty much begging, "I have been taken care of." So now he's going to go into his resume. Like shit. It says, "But David persisted, I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from his mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I do it to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living power." So what was King David doing? Young David, he been slaying beasts. Okay? And Yahweh Shai is coming to slay this beast system. Okay? You see? All right, so he looked at the Philistines as just an animal. Okay, he ain't had no respect for this nigga Goliath, man. Okay, no respect for this nigga, man. All right, because he feared Yahweh Bashim Al-Shai. He knew, what the Lord was capable of, man. You see, and it says, matter of fact, let's get that real quick. Get that prophecy. We'll go back. Revelation 12, all right, and 7. It says, "And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon." All right. So you have Michael, which is an archangel, archangel of war. All right. He's going to be with Yahushua, and they're going to fight against the dragon. All right. This beast system. All right. Because the top government in the world, this beast system, America, NATO, and EU. Okay, you see? So Yahweh Shai is coming, you know, to destroy the beast, to defeat, you know, the beast. It says, and the dragon fought his angels and prevailed not, neither was their place found in any more in heaven, okay, which is in rulership, okay. All right, because when you lose a war, if you're in rulership, but you lose the war, you're not in rulership anymore. And Esau's in his heaven, okay, and all his military, you know, might that he has put into heaven, you know, his air force, his satellites, all this shit coming down, okay, at the return of Yahushua, okay. So let's go back to 1 Samuel, all right, 17. All right, and listen who, you know, King David, all right, young David gives, all right, the let's call him young King David, you know, because he already had this, you know, this king mentality already, you know. Verse 1 Samuel 17 and 37 says, the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion. So he gave glory to the Lord. It wasn't David didn't boast in himself about what he did. He knew it was the Lord that rescued him, all right, from those situations. He said, the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord Yahweh Bashim al-Shah be with you. Then Saul gave David his armor, his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. All right, so he's equipping David, you know, with all this armor, okay? And it says, David put it on, strapped a sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. He said, I can't go in these, he protested to Saul. I'm not used to them. So David took them off again. So, you know, probably too big on him. You know, he couldn't move, he didn't have his mobility. So he like, look, this ain't the play. You know, he took all of it off, man. And it just shows you how much trust that young King David had in Yahweh Bashim al-Shah, his power, man. Okay? It says he picked up 5 smooth stones from the stream and put them into his shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley. Okay? You see? It said he started across the valley to fight the Philistines. So David, you know, he's like, look, I'm gonna stick with what I've been using, you know. So the things that he was defending the sheep with, the weapons he had to defend the sheep with, that's what he went to go to war with Goliath, man. You know, as the Lord has waged, you know, spiritual war on Esau in this time, you know, and we got to ride in the staff, which is this book, you know, and we're able to go to war with the devil in the spirit, you know, every day, you know. Hey, we run to face off in war, all right, with Esau, man, you know, in the spirit, all right. And it says, and Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him. It says, sneering in contempt at this ruddy faced boy. Verse 43 says, I am a dog. It says, am I a dog? He roared at David, that you come at me with a stick. And he cursed David by the name of his gods. Come over here and I'll give you to the birds and wild animals, Goliath yelled. Okay, so now, you know, Goliath sees, you know, young King David. He's like, this who y'all sent? You know, out of all these mighty men and warriors that y'all got in Israel, this who y'all sent for me? You know? So he, you know, goes back, you know, to talking crazy and reckless. Okay? And this is young King David's reply. It says, David replied to the Philistine, you come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the power of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will cut. So he's giving all praise and the glory to Yahweh Bashim al-Shah. You know, he's not saying what he's going to do. He's saying what the Lord is going to do. Okay? Like, first off, you know, highly offended, okay, Yahweh Bashim al-Shah. Okay? So the Lord, all right, is going to deal with you, man. Just like Esau. Esau has done so much in wickedness, okay, and has rebelled so much against Yahweh by Shema Shai. He's done. Esau defeated himself. You know, just who he is alone. That's why the Lord say he hate Esau. You know, that's why scripture say Esau have I hated. Okay, we're finna see, because you know, we bring that precept out. You know, they always try to find some way to wiggle out that precept. Well, the Lord finna show you how much he hate Esau. We're telling you that he hate Esau, but the Lord finna show how much he hate Esau, man. Okay, because Esau embodies everything that the Lord hates. You read in the scripture what the Lord hates. Esau embodies these things, man. Matter of fact, let's get it. You know, let's get it in the book of Proverbs 6 and 16. This is Proverbs 6 and 16. It says, these 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yeah, 7 are abomination unto him. A proud look. Okay? Esau, man. You know? A lying tongue and hands that shed innocent blood and heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that be swift to run into mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren, man. And Esau embodies all of that, man. Okay? Sowing discord, a lying tongue, you know. He constantly pushes division, all right, chaos, violence, okay? Swift to do mischief, a heart that imaginative, wickedness, man. Okay, this man does wickedness that no one else would think of, man. Like the things that he puts in the food, chemtrails, like who would think of that, man? Okay, the juice, okay, like who would think of that, man? To do the wickedness that he does, no one else is even programmed to think like that, man. Okay, and the Lord finna showcase how much he hates this devil, man. Because Esau embodies everything that the Lord hates, man. Okay, so going back to 1 Samuel 17, okay, 1 Samuel 17 and 46, it said, today the Lord Yahweh by Shema Shai will conquer you, and I will cut you, I will kill you and cut off your head, and then I will give the dead bodies of your men, okay, to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world would know that there is a power in Israel. And everyone assembled, and everyone assembled here will know that the Lord Yahweh by Shema Shai rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. And Goliath moved closer to attack David. David quickly ran to him to meet him. So David ran into this nigga, you know? So Goliath took his steps forward, and King David took off to this nigga, man. Like an elder apostle Gabar say, you gotta be a visionary. You gotta have a vision when you read this, man. You know? So Goliath, you know, he take his steps forward, you know, and he used to people being intimidated by him. And young King David ran to this nigga, man. Okay? And it says, reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with a sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down to the ground, man. And that's a position of worship too, you know. We fall face down, that's a position of paying homage, okay, as the scriptures say. Matter of fact, let's get that. The scriptures speak about that with the Philistines. Okay, this is the book of Jeremiah, I believe it's 40. All right, it's Jeremiah 45 and 17. It says, this is what the Lord says, you will rule the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Sabians. They will come to you with all their merchandise, paying tribute, and it will all be yours. They will follow you as prisoners in chains. They will fall to their knees in front of you and say, the Most High is with you, and he is the only power. There is none other. Okay, so King David, when he hit that nigga with that rock, it sunk in his forehead like a bullet. You know, it's anointed with some velocity on that stone, man. Okay, because the power of the Lord was with King David, man. You know how hard you gotta throw a stone for it to sink in somebody's forehead, man. Okay, especially this big. You know this nigga had a big, gigantic, hammer ass head. Okay, and King David threw that sling. You use that sling to sling that stone, man, and it sunk in that nigga forehead, and he fell down on his face, man. Okay, as the Lord sending a message, man. Okay, and all these heathens are finna bow. All right, you see, as you go here to Philippians. Okay, and it begins with Yahweh Shai. Philippians 2 and 9. It says, "Wherefore the Most High have highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name." All right, Yahweh Shai. All right, and his authority and his rank is above every authority and rank. Okay, it says that at the name of Yahweh Shai, every knee shall bow, all things in heaven and things in the earth and things under the earth. Okay, so the name of Yahweh Shai, everything is gonna bow. You see, all existence, all right, excluding the Heavenly Father, is gonna bow to Yahweh Shai when He comes. Okay, and King David just made the, the Lord used King David to make this, all right, this Philistine, all right, and bow with his face to the ground, man. Okay, and that's ultimate homage. Okay, when people bow down with their face to the ground at your presence, that's the ultimate homage that can be paid. That's worship. You see, so, and that's all throughout prophecy. With Isaiah 60, okay, and 14, which there's plenty more, but this will drive home the point. All right, this is Isaiah 60 and 14 says, "The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and they that despise thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord Yahweh, by Shem Shai, the Zion of the Holy One, all right, of Israel." Okay, so that's all throughout prophecy, man. Okay, so King David, hit that nigga with that stone, and he bowed down. Okay. Going back to 1 Samuel. All right, get ready to close out. All right, 1 Samuel, in verse 50, it says, "So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. Then David ran over and pulled Goliath's sword from his sheath. David used it to kill him and cut off his head. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah gave a great shout of triumph and rushed after the Philistines, chasing them as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. The bodies of the dead and the wounded Philistines were strewn all along." All right, it said they were strewn all along. Okay, the road from Shariam, all right, as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the Israelite armies returned and plundered the deserted Philistine camp. David took the Philistine's head to Jerusalem, but he had stored the man's armor, all right, in his own tent. And Saul watched David go out and fight the Philistines, and he asked Abner, the commander of his army, "Abner, whose son is this young man?" "I really don't know," Abner declared. "Well, find out who he is," the king told him. As soon as David returned from killing Goliath, Abner brought him to Saul with the Philistines, all right, head still in his hand. "Tell me about your father, young man," Saul said. And David replied, "His name is Jesse, and we live in Bethlehem." Okay, so that was the world's introduction to young King David. Okay, that's how young King David came on the scene. You got this young man, all right, this young, they call it a boy, carrying this big giant's head around, in triumph, man. You see? And we got a great triumph to come, man. And scriptures speak about how we're, going to celebrate triumph, okay, of our enemies, man. Let's go to, all right, Psalms 58. And right in 10 it says, the righteous shall rejoice when he seeth the vengeance. He shall wash his feet in the blood of the wicked, so that a man shall say, verily, there is reward for the righteous. Verily, he is a judge. All right, verily, he is a power that judgeth in the earth, man. You know, and we're going to be rejoicing at the fall of the wicked, man. You know, as you go to Revelation and see the Lord's going to do it, and we're not going to have any of Esau's weaponry to do it. You know, it's not going to be done with Esau's weaponry. No, we're going to get the victory through our power. Okay, that's another song. Psalms 44. I'll start at 4. Psalms 44 and 4. It said, thou art my king, O power. Command deliverances for Jacob. Through thee will we push down our enemies. Through thy name will we tread them under that rise against us. Just as King David, he came in that name. He came in the authority of Yahweh Bashem Al Shai. All right, and it was victorious, man. You know, we come in that name, and we're going to be victorious, man. We're going to triumph, man. You know, ain't no doubt about it. You know, the thing is, hey, that daily fight to stay in this thing, man. But the victory is already in stone. Okay, this nigga is done. You see? It says, for I will not trust in my bow, neither shall my sword save me, but thou hast saved us from our enemies and have put them to shame that hated us. In the Most High we boast all the day long and praise thy name forever. Okay? And that's going to be the scene on those chariots, man. Okay? When you get Revelation, all right, chapter 15. Okay? In verse, start at 1, it says, I saw another, all right, sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of the Most High. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast, and over his image, and over his mark, and over his number, and over his name, stand on the sea of glass having the harps of the Most High. And that's in their chariot. Okay? It's their chariot view of the destruction, all right, of the beast, man. America being that lake of fire. Okay? Looking through the bottom of their chariot, you know, through the atmosphere. Okay? And it's going to look like fire, you know, mingled in glass. Okay? You see? Looking at that destruction from the chariot through the atmosphere, man. Okay? Having the victory over this man's image, all right, his mark, which means, hey, these are the elect that didn't bow the knee. All right? You see, the elect is not going to bow the knee. They're not going to receive this man's charagma, man. Okay? Because even those that die for not receiving the charagma, they're going to be on those chariots, okay? All right, celebrating the victory over this beast, man. The triumph, man. You know? Verse 3, it says, and they sung the song of Moses, the servant of the Most High, and the song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, Lord power almighty. Just and true are thy ways, the King of saints. You see? And that's the ultimate triumph when this place is destroyed and we're on those chariots, man. You know? The Lord's going to, Yahweh Shai is going to come take the head off the snake. Okay? So, that was the point. You know, just wanted to get into that. You know, Lord will. All right, you brothers. All right, and you sisters edified. Till next time I say shalom. Call me out shalom. Abba soon. Shalom.